All right. So, welcome. We're here for this training call. It's all about how do we grow our email list and grow our business with a quiz. Quizzes are super hot topics right now. We're going to talk about what's the benefit of using a quiz as a lead magnet or an opt-in as a kind of a freebie gift. And what do you need in order to make a successful quiz funnel? So I'm excited about this. We're here with our very special guest, Molly Mandelberg. We're going to be talking about quizzes for business and why they're so much fun to interact with as well. Kind of the psychology of quizzes are a lot of fun, and they're super hot right now. So we'll be talking about all of that. Molly Mandelberg is the founder of Wild Hearts Rise Up and creator of Your Money Machine. And she supports, I'm sorry, I missed a part. The Wild Woman's approach to a heart-centered sales funnel. I messed that up, Molly. I'm going to say that again because I love this and I totally botched it. I got distracted by technology. Molly Mandelberg is the founder of Wild Hearts Rise Up and creator of Your Money Machine, the wild woman's approach to a heart-centered sales funnel. I love that. A tech-savvy strategist, Molly supports coaches, healers, and emerging thought leaders to expand their outreach so they can connect with more people and make more money with less time spent. With the heart of a writer and the brain of an engineer, Molly is uniquely qualified to support her people not only to connect the dots and tackle the tech, but also to craft their deep work into inspiring content and hot copy. She's known for taking the overwhelm out of big, exciting projects so they can be birthed into the world and received by those who need them. So we're going to take a moment to just put our snappy fingers together and welcome Molly. And before you start, Molly, I'm going to just ask a couple ladies turned off their video. If you can turn your video on, even if you're not there, that's really helpful to just feel your presence. So even if you're eating and all that stuff. And then we're going to, everybody go on mute, and we're going to go ahead and just blow kisses and snaps and warmly welcome Molly to the call. Thank you so much for being here, Molly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to start off by saying, wow, thank you guys for showing up in the middle of a day on a Tuesday to receive more magic that could hopefully inspire you to go further with your business. And thank you, Jessica, so much for having me here and for building such a beautiful empire of awake and amazing women to, blast off with. This is such an amazing platform to be a part of. So thank you for having me, and thank you for showing up.
Absolutely.
It's a huge gift to get to be here. So a little bit more about me. I'm living kind of a ridiculous life right now. I travel the world full time. In the past couple of years, I've been on a safari in Africa. I've led a retreat in Thailand. I spent a few weeks in Europe on a writing retreat with my mom. And in between all of that, I've been traveling around the US and a little bit of Canada full time while building out a tiny home in my giant Sprinter van, which is absolutely not the life for everyone, but it's totally a dream life for me. And all of that is mostly possible because of the things that I set up to support my business to be more automated and allow me to work remotely full time and still grow my business. So it wasn't always like this. It was definitely an uphill battle for a while, figuring out what it was that wanted to be created by me, that my people were actually desiring and asking for. And I don't know about you guys, but I knew early on that growing my list was going to be a super important piece. And I was creating, I'm a maker of things. So I was creating all kinds of offerings. I made blueprints, I made checklists, I made video training series, I would do workshops, I would do webinars, I still do sometimes, doing another workshop today actually. And I was networking like a mofo, trying to get as much outreach as possible so that I could grow my list and hopefully grow my business to a place that was really supporting me. But nothing was really working. And it was a few years ago, it was working enough that my business didn't die in the water, but I knew that it was possible to get more traction. And I was sort of scrambling to figure out how to build that momentum. So a few years ago, I started playing with quizzes and so sort of testing things and refining things and nerding out on it, studying as many quizzes as I could get my hands on. I'm sure we've all taken one of these quizzes at some point in the past on Facebook or wherever. But it was after studying and refining and testing my quizzes that my list started growing like crazy. And then my business did too. So actually, in just the last 10 months, my list has septupled, which means it's grown by 7 times, almost exclusively from my quiz. And I've had so much fun making my own quiz, as well as watching that multiply my list, that I finally started helping other people make quizzes for their business, because I'm already in the content and technology world when I'm serving my clients. So right now I'm only running one client attracting quiz to my list, and I have a simple $5 a day Facebook ad that's going to that, and that is growing my list by 75 to 100 new leads every single week, which has made it possible to, of course, increase my income. It's made it way easier to launch programs, launch events, and other offerings that I have. And all that it took was this simple 9-question game that I put together and kept tweaking until it worked. And that tweaking is definitely a vital part of the process, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But you're probably all aware of how important it is to grow your list when you're building your business. And I knew I wanted to grow my list, but it wasn't until I had a big issue when I was traveling that I started really tapping into the value of my list. So I have done this Wild Heart Spring Tour, kind of speaking tour and road trip over the last few years in the spring. And I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, trying to make it from one class I was teaching to another gig, of course, by way of Santa Fe, because how fun is it to stop in Santa Fe and get to experience the magic there. And my turbo went out in my van, and it's a Mercedes-Benz, so its parts are very expensive. And it was a $4,400 fix that I needed to get back on the road. And in that exact moment, I didn't have the liquidity to just hand over $4,400 in order to get the turbo replaced. So I sent an email out to my list, and I made a ridiculous offer for a half-price VIP day that was, a great deal. But of course, I could only offer so many of those because I had a full schedule of doing events and traveling between places. But enough people signed up for that within a day that I got to replace my turbo and get back on the road, with, more story involved in that, of course. But I started realizing that people being on my list and also being nurtured and followed up with to the point that they're ready to say yes when you make the right invitation is the most amazing resource to have and to cultivate in a business. So having a list in itself doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to be ready to jump on an invitation like that. But if you take the time to nurture that list and deliver contributions to them, make a point of contributing and actually sending them valuable material that isn't necessarily always an invitation, you start to turn those followers into fans, and those fans become clients eventually. So getting them onto your list is the first step, which can be a challenge if we don't have the right things in place. But nurturing them until they're ready to actually become your clients is really a vital piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of people never go to the trouble of setting up. And I like to think about this like an energetic bank account. There's a connection bank account between you and any person that you're connected to. And the more that you're willing to make deposits of contributions that are low, that are not invitations, they're not asks, they're not offers, but are actually just you giving something into their world from your heart, something that may be a tip or maybe a story or maybe an insight or an idea or a tool or a ritual or practice that you can deliver to them before you ever invite them to something more where they have to opt in again or pay you money or show up live. That energetic bank account, when you start to make deposits, you're allowed to then make withdrawals. And it's something to keep in mind, that balance. So before I dive into more about the quizzes, I just want to mention one way that I do that, which I call a tip sequence, and other people refer to as a nurture sequence. And it's basically an automated series of emails where every week or every 2 weeks, I'm sending out an email that is not an invitation, that is really just like, maybe sometimes it'll be a podcast recording or a YouTube video. But mostly it's just something I've been thinking about that is evergreen content. So it never says Happy Christmas or happy holidays, or, welcome to the new year, or happy Easter, or anything like that. It's always something that can live on its own in time, because people come in through many different ways, whether they signed up at a workshop and wanted to be on my list, or they came and got a free gift from my website, or they came through my quiz. They receive the emails related to those gifts, and then they all drip into the beginning of this tip sequence or nurture sequence, and they're followed up with by me indefinitely with content that is just a contribution. So that means when I'm going to invite people to an event, or when I'm going to invite people to my next program that I'm launching, there's all these people that are already sort of warm, that I have made deposits with in these energetic bank accounts, and they're more ready to, jump in when the time is right. So I just wanted to mention that, because setting up the front end thing that gets people onto your list is really awesome and important. And also nurturing those people and following up with them is a vital part of this whole online game, I think, working. So yeah, I've noticed for me, most of the people who come through cold traffic, like they came through the Facebook ad, through the quiz, through another place, usually have been on my list for about 3 to 6 months before they end up working with me one-on-one. And also the last time I did the math a few months ago, I found that over 75% of my one-on-one clients had come to be on my list through my quiz. So it's really been one of the best ways that I've grown my business in the last few years. It's a great way to bring new folks in, and it's also a great way to connect with them. But it's important to stay in touch and follow up until they're ready to dive in. So why are quizzes so hot right now? We said we were going to talk about this. Quizzes are something called a gamified experience. So it allows people to be entertained in the process of getting to know more about themselves, and you getting to know more about them, and also them getting to know more about your work. So as humans, we're innately motivated to have fun and to be entertained. And we're also hugely interested in learning more about ourselves, which you can see anytime you're in a conversation with someone. As soon as you start getting curious about them and their lives, they can't wait to unload and unleash and be witnessed and be revealed to you. So the more that we can allow space for people to learn about themselves, the more engaging that anything is going to be. So if we can create a way for people to both learn about themselves and also be entertained and have fun in the process, it's obvious why that would be one of the most engaging offerings that we could create. Whether that's finding out which Disney character you are, or whether that's which X-Men character you would be, or in the case of the best quiz I have running for my business right now, discovering what level of thought leader you are. Quizzes are an awesome way to just invite new people into your sphere of influence. So what is the benefit of using a quiz as a lead magnet for your business? Not only is a quiz more engaging than a PDF or a blueprint or a checklist or even a free video training series, because you're asking them questions and they have to respond immediately in order to play along, it's also a really quick way for you to be collecting data about what your people desire and need from you as a business owner. So it's sort of like having a survey before they come in, so you actually have all this information about them before you're even trying to invite them to anything. It's kind of like if you had a business and people just walked through the door with a sign on their chest telling you what it is that they're looking for. It's much easier to guide them to the right aisle and the right product because you already know all this stuff about them. So you can ask questions about their goals, you can ask questions about their challenges, their aspirations, and then on the back end, that allows you, if you set it up right, to easily cater your invitations to that specific desire for that person. So as an example, depending on how people finish my quiz, they're going to see one of 5 different offerings that range from a $17 mini course to a $300 home study program. And the offering that they see is directly related to what I know about them because of how they answered the quiz and where they are in the expansion of their business because of all the answers that I got from them. And I think really this customized kind of experience is what allows you to speak directly to that one person on the other end of the screen about what they're going through and hopefully invite them to something that they would actually be interested in, all because they answered a few questions that you set up and that then categorize them into these buckets on the back end. I think this kind of catered messaging is so much more relevant and engaging than just offering everybody who shows up on your list the same exact thing, because they might not all be in the same place when they're coming to you. And no matter what your business is, I'm sure there's a range of like most pressing desires or most biggest challenges that they're facing right now. Even if they're all sort of in the same specific niche, there's always going to be some variety there of what they're desiring and what they're working through. So for me, I know that somebody who's just starting out in their business is definitely going to need a different set of resources than someone who's maybe been seeing clients for 10 years and is now just ready to go bigger with their online presence. They're going to need a different set of resources. And so I've made different offerings to support those different needs. While I can serve clients on every end of that spectrum within my specific niche, I first need to know which of those categories they fall into so that I can offer them the right stuff. A couple more examples of that would be like a catering company could have a quiz that asks a person what type of events that visitor hosts, and then direct them to the proper forms or area to fill out forms for catering such an event. Or if you're a dance instructor, it could be that you're gauging their level of skill or their desire for advancement and then inviting them to the proper class or the proper online training that would suit them for their specific desires where they are right now. Or
did you already talk about what you ask in your quiz? Like, what are you filtering for? You may have already said that and I missed it.
Yeah, I sort of am filtering for how far along are they in getting visible online with their business.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So how much have they already set up? How big is their list already? How many clients do they already have? I don't necessarily ask those in those exact words, but I'm trying to see how far along are they in the expansion of their business growing online so that I know what kind of resources. The resources that I invite them to are things like the Money Machine program, which is how to actually set up your list and start sending emails. Some of them, if they're further along, is just directing them straight to get on the phone with me so that we can talk about what would serve them best. Some of them get pointed to how to set up your website in the first place. So those are people that are not as far along in their business who don't even have their website up yet. It's just varying degrees of how can we expand your reach further online. And there's also a quiz thing that comes in play there too.
I have one more quick question just in that same vein, just for clarity, because I've seen on websites people are like, what kind of leader are you? Take the quiz. Right. So what's your question that then has them want to take the quiz?
Yeah, mine is, what level of thought leader are you? And so I base my 5 archetypes at the end on 5 cards from the major arcana of the tarot. So people come out as the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, or the Hierophant. And depending on where they are, because of the research that I've done about the tarot and how that relates to the Kabbalah and how that relates to like ideas coming into manifest and physical reality, I sort of relate all of that magical stuff to business expansion.
Cool.
And they see those archetypes in the image when they see the picture for the quiz. So they sort of get, in my hope in doing that is that I attract more magical, mystical, woo-woo women, because that's who I love to work with the most. People who are in the heart-centered space and need help with the salesy marketing space and bridging that gap for them. So what's fun about my quiz is it's talking about the business and it's talking about the thought leadership and the desire. It speaks to the desire to serve more and to influence in a bigger way, but it's also poking at the parts of us that are mystical and magical. People who really don't like the tarot are probably going to see that imagery and get turned off and not want to take it, which is exactly what a great quiz will do. It will attract the right people and it will repel the people that aren't quite a good fit. And through the process of the questions of the quiz, that will get further and further. The people who don't finish the quiz are not supposed to finish it. We want the people who make it all the way to the end and are still curious and interested to be the ones who end up on our list. So it weeds people in and out, which is great. Yeah. So another example of another quiz that perhaps a relationship coach could make would be a quiz that determines what kind of heartbreak or what kind of lover they are, and then delivers insights and inspiration that are focused for that type of person, which would then guide them towards greater healing or more courage or deeper communication skills, depending on what the desire or the need really is there. So what are some of the components that we need in order to make a successful quiz funnel? So I have helped people make all kinds of quizzes, and I have to say that it's much easier to create a quiz for your business if you're super clear on your niche. So, for example, when you finish my quiz, a couple of the types get invited to learn more about quizzes. And I wouldn't invite people who are in perhaps the fool or the magician category to that, because they might not be as clear on who they work with yet. They might not be as specific and concrete on their niche quite yet. And in my opinion, a quiz is kind of a lot of work to set up, not to just get the quiz software working, but all the things that follow it and all the right invitations after it. And in order to create that much content, I think it's easier if you first know exactly who you work with. So if you know who it is you serve and you have, some awareness about what they desire, and you've worked with them, you've spoken to them, and you know how they talk about their issues, as well as what problems they've already paid money to try and solve in the past, that information is hugely valuable in creating a relevant quiz. Yeah. Another piece is an email autoresponder. So this is your actual list. I think this is a vital part of the quiz funnel, because the better you're able to automate the delivery of the results and continue that nurturing, that follow-up with people, giving them insights and ideas, and then well-directed invitations, the more lucrative and engaging any quiz funnel is going to be. What's the point of having a quiz if it isn't leading people to your list so you can build your relationship with them over time? The whole point of the quiz, I think, is as a list builder. So you want to have that autoresponder in place. It's vital. Also, it's important to have a compelling questions and a hot title. So a hot title that's really enticing and curiosity piquing, and hopefully in some way acknowledging of the viewer. If you notice, I say, what kind of thought leader are you? It's making an assumption that they're already a thought leader, and that in some way is like acknowledging what I see in them. And someone has to sort of step into that acknowledgement in order to even take the quiz. So there's a beautiful little magic that happens inside of there. Which sometimes we do on accident and sometimes we can, manifest and do on purpose. And then also having questions that are easy and fun to answer, or that give someone a new awareness about themselves in the process of answering it, are great. And you also, of course, want to include questions that are going to give you the back-end data that you need in order to bucket people appropriately into those different categories. So things like what their biggest challenge is in relation to your work, or what they want most right now, what their future vision looks like. It's important to ask enough questions that you feel confident they're landing in the right buckets, and also not so many questions that they give up partway through the quiz because it takes too long to complete. So there's a sweet spot in there that's generally 3 or 4 to 9 questions. And it's also important to make the answers short and to the point enough that people will finish the quiz. If they have to read like a ton of things in order to get to the end of the quiz and answer all the questions, they might lose interest. And unfortunately, online, that attention span can be really short. So we want to keep people engaged as long as possible by making it easy to answer. Another piece that's important, there's a lot of different quiz platforms out there. The quiz builder that you use should be something that speaks to your list. So making sure that the two are integratable, if that's a word, that they're willing to integrate. The quiz shouldn't be something that you have to grade or rate yourself and then manually enter people into your list and manually respond to them. If you did it that way, I think you would naturally have a resistance to getting 100 new leads per week, because it would just mean it's so much more work for you that you don't want to do it. There's tons of quiz softwares out there, but you want to make sure that it automatically transfers new leads over to your email autoresponder. And ideally, that the quiz software is also going to add the tag or the information about what result they got over to your list as well, so that people are then getting the appropriate results emails and the invitations that you want them to see without you having to lift a finger. So we want this, ideally, you set it up, and from someone seeing it to taking it to getting their results to being invited to something at the end, that's a hands-off process for you. And of course, once you set up that whole sequence of events, you're going to want to keep paying attention. Where am I losing people? What are they not saying yes to? Are they not even opening the emails? You have to pay attention to a lot of those different moving pieces to figure out what needs to be tweaked and changed for it to actually become a successful funnel. But the key component here that we're talking about is making sure that at least the quiz software you're using and the list that you're using, whether it's ActiveCampaign or Constant Contact or Infusionsoft or Mailchimp or whatever, that those two things talk to each other so the right emails can show up. So I go into a lot more detail on all of this stuff and what those little pieces are and how to make those hot questions in this 5-day Create Your Client Attracting Quiz Challenge, which is a free 5-day challenge. That's happening live on October 14th through 18th. So if any of you are interested, I'll put the little link in the chat here if you want to join us for that 5-day challenge. But it's just a way to start getting curious about what are those questions I want to be asking, what are the buckets I would start putting people into, what kinds of fun archetypes. Like I use the tarot, but you could make something up. The last time I ran this challenge, people were giving people their crystal talisman. They were giving them the money queen archetype, like pulling a queen from the history of the world and saying this is a queen that has these aspects to her that relate to how you do money in your world. There's so many different ways that you can do archetypes. Somebody was using shoes, fancy shoes as the archetypes for their quiz. There's all kinds of different like ways you can juice it up, but getting into the question of what are these buckets in the first place? How am I going to ask questions that lead people over to them? And then how am I going to make it really fun for them to interact with it so that they're happy with the results and they feel acknowledged and both inspired and invited to something more. So I wanted to just open it up for questions. I know I spewed a lot of stuff at you all at once, but I'm here if you have any questions about quizzes or list building in general too.
Thank you so much, Molly. Awesome. I'm looking forward to the questions. The way that we usually run the questions is you can just unmute yourself and say whatever your question is. I'm super excited about the challenge. That's awesome. So it sounds like basically it's a live 5 days that you'll be walking us through the process of setting up our quiz.
Yeah, you'll get
That's
a video
awesome.
and a PDF every single day, and then start making them and giving feedback, and people win prizes for interacting every day.
Nice. Oh, that sounds awesome. That's great. So, and the link is right over here. Great.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome, ladies. Sign up for that. That's great. 5-day challenges are a lot of fun to participate in. So, and I know, Molly, you probably have made it just like super fun and easy to access for busy ladies.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably 5, maybe 10, 20 minutes of work a day to start seeing this new project come to life. It's pretty fun.
Very cool. That's awesome. Super doable. Yeah, so let's go ahead and unmute and we'll go into our questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you find that there is one email platform that, or a newsletter platform that works best with, you know what I mean? Like I'm currently using Mailchimp. Might be helpful if you already have suggestions about one in particular that works well. Be thinking about switching. So
if you're considering switching from Mailchimp, I think that's a good idea. I acknowledge Mailchimp for trying to get on board and make it easier to do things that other softwares do, like tagging and segmenting your list more easily, setting up simple email automation sequences. They're trying to catch up with where other people are. Personally, I use ActiveCampaign. If your list is under 500, I think it's only $9 a month for the light version, which I know Mailchimp is free, but it's just so much simpler to begin tagging people and setting up email sequences that do fancy things. For example, I can set up an email sequence that if somebody doesn't open the last email in 3 days, I can send it to them again. Or if somebody clicks a link in this email or buys something, they immediately drop out of the email sequence. So there's like tags and triggers and goals and things. It's just a lot more user friendly when you start doing fancy things like quizzes or, fancy webinar funnels, that Mailchimp is going to be just a little bit clunkier to work with. And I think ActiveCampaign will actually help you migrate over from Mailchimp for free when you start an account with them. I don't know what you use, Jessica.
Mailchimp is a great place to start. It's just nice because it's intuitive and user friendly initially, and eventually, I think most people end up growing out of it for exactly the reasons that Molly's talking about. So.
Yeah. Other ones that are comparable are Constant Contact. Infusionsoft is way more robust than most people need, but it's also got fancy features. I have been running my business on ActiveCampaign for years, and I love it. And I even have Kajabi, which I could run my emails through them, but I love ActiveCampaign so much that I just integrate the two all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just functional. It does the things that you want it to do, which is
and
nice.
You ladies can, anytime you're looking at any kind of software, you can usually do a Google search and be like, whatever the name of that software is, integration, and then whatever email you're using. So ActiveCampaign, the word integration or integrates, I usually just put integration.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually there's something will pop up, like let's say in the Mailchimp like help website or in the ActiveCampaign help website, or a lot of them even have an integration section. So all this stuff is easy to search for, so that you're not purchasing things only to find out later that they actually don't talk to each other.
They can't talk to each other. Yeah, I'll also just mention there's a website called Zapier, which I consider the Chinese finger trap of the internet, because it takes two things that don't actually normally talk to each other and it makes them talk to each other. And yeah, there's free accounts with Zapier, and then you can pay more to have, more apps available or more Zaps available. But even things that might not necessarily talk to each other are able to connect through that sometimes.
Would you tell us kind of where there's certain things at certain levels of growing a business that one wants to focus on? It's like at the basic level, it's just like get clients and serve clients, and there's like some high touch things involved with that. And then, that's kind of my philosophy is like, don't pay for a team of employees to do things for you if you're not ready for that yet,
Yeah.
So this is kind of like tech heavy. A lot of us on this call and a lot of the women that'll be watching this can like piece this out for themselves. And at what level of business is this appropriate, where it doesn't become like a distraction?
Yeah. I really think if you're serving clients and you know who they are and you've served enough of them that you're clear on how you help them and what they desire, then this is a great way to start growing your list, talking to those people about those things. It's really, like you said, the beginning phases of your business should be high touch, talking to people, having consultations and conversations, gaining that information and seeing how often people are actually paying you to do what you say you do. And that data of what people are actually paying to solve, paying to get support with, is what will tell you how to market yourself in the future. Because unfortunately, it's that thing, what people will actually pay for, that dictates the offerings you create in the future. And you can still deliver lots of other magic and what they need in there, but if they don't explicitly want it, then it's not worth creating an offering about that. You have to know that they actually want the thing. So I think once you've done enough of that exploration and experimentation in one-on-one work and in networking and in actually having consultations and letting people hire you, then you're beginning to get ready to create offerings that are more automated, like an online program or a group program or a live event where people have to pay to show up. That those things that might follow a quiz like this, or that you would invite your list to once your list is growing, that those are easier to create and have them be lucrative and effective when you really know what people are paying you for, what people are hiring you to help them with. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. That exploration phase and that experimentation phase is hugely important. And I don't think it really ever ends. It's just the thing that keeps feeding you and letting you know what wants to come to life next.
Awesome.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Well, you were saying that sometimes you'll have 5 different endings to one of your quizzes, and the way the quiz ends, it'll go into 5 different buckets.
Mm-hmm.
I work with Constant Contact, and the different software, maybe Constant Contact does or doesn't, do they create that for you, like option A to end the quiz, option B to end the quiz, or is that something that you have to know how to do?
Yeah, so I create a different email sequence with different things I'm saying to them for those 5 things. And then I just, they all are going into the same list. I just use a main list on my, on ActiveCampaign, which would be the same in Constant Contact. And then I use tags to separate them out. So when they go from my quiz to my list, that little connection, that quiz software is adding the tag when they get transferred over. And that tag triggers one of 5 email sequences.
Got it. Okay.
So Constant Contact definitely does tags. Then you can definitely create different email sequences for that. Yeah. Cool. And how that's all laid out, we talk a little bit about it in the 5-day challenge.
Cool.
Yeah. The whole map you get if you end up going further past the challenge, but the challenge will give you an idea of how that all works.
Excellent. I'm down for a challenge.
Awesome. Any other questions? Got the expert on the line. Take advantage of this.
I have another question. Yeah. What if you have more, this is going to sound silly, but what if you have more than one niche?
Yeah, I wouldn't try to make one quiz that serves both.
So you can have separate quizzes for the different niches. Cool.
Yeah. And it sort of depends. Do you want to tell me more about what your 2 niches are, and I could give you a better answer?
How much time do you think we have? I'm a hypnotherapist, and I train people to be hypnotherapists, but I'm also an intuitive reader and trainer, meditation teacher. So I have like 2 very distinct sides that really do feed into each other. But this is where I go like this a lot.
Yeah. So a quiz, I mean, I could see 2 ways of it working. One is you create a quiz that helps people figure out what kind of facilitator they want to become, so you can train them to do it. And one quiz that helps them figure out what kind of modality to help them with if they're struggling with stuff. Or you could also create one quiz that helps them determine if they're ready to facilitate or receive.
Ooh.
Put them in one direction or the other.
I like
that would be probably be
facilitate or receive. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, every facilitator needs to also receive healing and work on their own stuff too.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. That was really wise.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And at some point, sometimes it becomes more like a survey, like, are you more suited? Are you more desiring of this or more desiring of this? And it's kind of, I think the best client attraction quizzes are also in a way a survey for you to get that information.
Totally. Yeah.
This is great information.
Well, good.
There was a distinction that I think, and I think you touched on it, but it was helpful for me to hear a while back, where it's like, I definitely have a niche, and the women I attract, I think the distinction helped me realize that they're at different levels, right? Which is obvious to me now, but at the time I was kind of treating them all as like, any one of you could be a fit for my one program. And someone explained to me these different lanes, that like some people are in a lane, like the green lane, which is like they are a fit. And like when they see what you're offering, they know they're a fit. Like they're like, I'm like, they're green. It's green light. Like it's a match. And then the yellow lane is kind of like they're on the fence, but not because that they don't trust you, but because they just don't know if they're like ready for you, or if it's like they just are not quite sure if it's a fit. And they might need a little bit, like you would talk to them a little bit differently of like, how can you kind of seduce them over, in a way that feels like, inviting.
In alignment. Yeah.
And the people in the red that don't think they're a fit, but that what you do would be great for them, and there's like a whole different way to speak with them, to have them be like, oh, actually, yeah, now I do see how hypnotherapy could help me, or whatever.
Yeah, it's like visitors, followers, and raving fans. The raving fans are already ready to buy. You just have to show them what it is. The followers need some more connection, more curiosity, more like chance to poke their nose in and see if it's really for them or not, and then they'll join. And the the visitors just haven't become followers yet. They just are getting to know you,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they're more skeptical people, or, more less ready to buy in general in their lives. And it's definitely going to be a different language. That's sort of the whole beauty of this quiz thing.
That's what I was going to ask, if that is good sorting for that kind of thing.
Yeah, so that would definitely be one of the factors that you'd want to put in play. So for mine, I'm looking at what level of business expansion they're at. You could also look at what level of readiness they're at to say yes to this one thing. You could also look at perhaps they're on like a skill spectrum, like somebody who is a novice at tennis versus somebody who's an advanced tennis player, that they're going to need to be looking at different parts of their game to improve. Like there's definitely so many different ways that you could break these buckets down. It doesn't necessarily have to be a skill level. It could be more of an awareness level. It could be more of a like distinct desire thing. Like for example, the relationship coach quiz. It could be that this person wants to get over heartbreak. This person wants to find a new lover. This person wants to just learn how to love themselves. You might be separating them into very distinct different categories. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be crossover. Everybody needs to heal from their heartbreak and learn how to love themselves in order to find a good partner. But what is their most pressing desire right now?
Mm-hmm.
So some of them are more differently like mapped, and some of them are more about scoring them on a gauge of engagement,
Cool. So I just want to recap that, because I think that's an important distinction, because I think some of the women listening on this call are going to be like using the quiz to like separate people into different containers so that they can actually have different offerings that address those different desires. Like the example you gave with the relationship, like maybe a different course or different webinar or whatever that addresses different facets of that world. And then some of us have maybe just one or two offerings, but we just need to speak to people differently to get them into the same door.
Totally.
Cool. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it could be useful for both of those.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and take a couple more questions. Just imagine you're saving yourself thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars with this VIP coaching that you're getting.
I have another question.
Debbie.
Go ahead, Debbie.
So earlier you talked about how you often send, what did you call them, the deposits into your energy bank by sending out free gifts, and which I love that idea, and I've never done that. I've always operated on the assumption that if you send people too many things, they're going to unsubscribe because you're sending them too much. So what's the ratio that you do between free gifts into your energy bank and then here's a class I'm doing, sign up? Like, what's the ratio to that? And how often would you send the free things out?
It sort of depends on how many things I'm launching. And I just want to make one distinction real quick, is the free gifts and my nurture sequence are sort of two different things. The free gifts I have on my website to get people onto my list. The nurture sequence is just a series of emails that's going out that is a contribution. So it's.
And how often do you send those out?
Yeah. So when someone first gets onto that sequence, they're getting an email every Monday. And that's for about 6 or 7 months. And then it's every other week.
Oh, wow.
It slows down. But why I do that is so that I feel good and aligned when I do want to make an invitation, that I can send another email out that week, maybe not the same day. I put them all on Monday so that I know as long as I don't send it on Monday, nobody's getting a second email from me today.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Marie. So I just send as many of those sales emails. I usually don't want to send more than 3 emails in a week. I know some people send 3 emails in a day. I usually unsubscribe from those. Yeah. But I think it's also, I have the assumption that the more I'm inviting people and not contributing, the more likely they are to unsubscribe. If somebody's just getting an email that's like, hey, here's this juicy love note, here's this yummy thing I wanted to share with you, that makes it easier for them to receive the emails from me that are actually inviting them to something and selling something.
So then this is.
I was going to say, I have a couple thoughts about that as well. Yes. Just with a slightly different business model. But did you have a different?
I just want to finish off the question with then. So then the quizzes then, that would help to decide who's going to be receiving something from a nurture list. Does that make sense? The quizzes can also help decide who's going to be nurtured with what?
You could have separate nurture sequence depending on who's on your list, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I send them
Excellent.
different emails with their results and different invitations for a couple days or weeks. And then they all trickle into the same nurture sequence because I just have one super long nurture sequence now. But you could have potentially, like for you, maybe you have a different nurture sequence for the facilitator type people versus just the healing receiving people.
Mm-hmm. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Jessica?
Yeah, I just have a thought because I have an event or two, like a live event or two every month during the school year. So I'm very aware that I'm like bombarding my list with invitations all the time out of necessity for, the monthly gatherings. And so what I do is I will, rather than sending more emails in between, I will, because then there's also other stuff I'm marketing as well in terms of my own webinars, et cetera. So it's a lot. They're getting a lot of emails, usually about once a week. I will almost always include a free gift at the top of those emails so that they know that even when I'm asking them for money, they can, if anything, they can just open up and always get a sweet treat.
I love that.
And some of those are other people's gifts. Like Molly, I'll be sharing your quiz probably once it's evergreen, so a little later in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sharing that to my list. So like there's like, how can I ask my list for money, essentially, but make sure that I'm nourishing them by giving them gifts, like kind of softening it with gifts so that they feel inclined to open my emails regardless. And they don't just feel like, Jessica's just asking me for money all the time.
Right. You put those sweet treats in there and it's net positive still. You're not making
it opens you up to collaborate with other entrepreneurs because you're like, I have this list and they could use Kavita's wisdom, or they could use Liz's wisdom, or they'd probably love to take Jennifer's quiz. So it's a cool way to also just cross promote with each other's free gifts.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And yeah, like depending on your model, you might have to be making more invitations. So what can we do to contribute in such a way that doesn't feel out of alignment? It's awesome.
Any questions before we complete? Now's the time. All right. Well, we covered a lot, and I really appreciate this. The world of quizzes has always been a bit of a mystery to me. Like, I'm familiar with client magnets and opt-ins, and usually they're relatively simple. And I know that the quiz has some moving parts, but it just sounds like it's so worth the enrichment of the relationship that you get to have with the people that you're interfacing with. And it's been really cool to just hear a little bit more about the inner workings. And I really appreciate your come from, Molly, which is also just so like open to people, women who color outside the lines, and something that can be done in a really heart-based, curiosity-based way that feels really delicious. So I really appreciate your wisdom here.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for showing up and asking questions and participating. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great information.
Yeah, I just want to invite you all to unmute yourself and just give a thank you. It's great if you talk over each other just so she gets to hear our voices. Thank you.
Fabulous information.
Yeah, great.